Many people make the mistake of simply going to a residential conveyancer and someone that focuses on resi conveyancing. It's really important to get an expert who knows how to read a commercial property contract.
Investment should be all about the numbers, but we know that 95% of investors make decisions based on emotion.
When people are going, oh, it's doom and gloom and, this and that, that's always when there's an opportunity.
I've got so many war stories where we've seen settlements go wrong afterwards and clients have had to flip properties less than a year afterwards and then made a loss on their initial investment. Welcome back, everyone. I'm Paul Snow from Snow Law & Associates. We're back with another podcast of Stay Frosty. Here we have
Lisa Hav from Personalised Property Professionals.
Rob Chambers from iBuyNew.
And Vicki from Impactor Commercial Advocates.
Thanks for coming along. I just wanted to get you guys, we work variously within each other's client referrals and on conveyancing matters quite regularly. Obviously, Lisa, you work with investors in buying residential property, Rob with off-the-plan properties investments interstate and Australia-wide, and Vicki, you're in the commercial space. I just wanted to get to know a little bit more about you, basically get the client experience. Tell me just quickly, what got you guys each into, being a buyer's advocate? I'll start off with you, Lisa.
For me, it was basically I've got my own property portfolio with my husband, and we got to the stage where we couldn't buy any more properties, or he told me I couldn't buy any more properties. So from there, it was why not keep the knowledge and everything that I've got and help other people buy property and buy it right. So in other words, just help them through that process and guide them to buy the right property for the right price.
Very nice. Rob?
Well, for me, I actually have always been pretty hands-on and enjoy sort of building things. And I actually did a pre-apprenticeship while I was sort of in my mid-years and I've always been interested in construction. But I started my journey in real estate working for builders, and then they went through some challenging times around the COVID years, and I sort of thought, well, how can I utilise the skills that I've learned with house and land, working with perhaps a broader property type. And so iBuyNew gave me that opportunity to work with townhomes as well as apartments, and also not just locally but also interstate.
Yeah, very nice. Vicki, what brought you to the industry?
So I have a background in small business. Although we're based HQs in Melbourne, I grew up in Geelong, and family had 5 or 6 businesses throughout Geelong. Commercial property and business was a big part of growing up. And so fast forward, I've had 4 of my own. I've sold 3 successfully. I was CEO of a property development crew for a private family office. Whilst I did have one of my businesses in Brunswick for 4 years, I was president of an association that represented about 700 businesses.
Very nice.
Quite a thankless role, but I loved it. Essentially, it meant that I was an advocate for all those businesses going to council meetings and, calling them out on things that weren't serving the area. So buying advocacy or advocacy in general for commercial property is just a natural progression of property and business and advocacy, and all of those being consolidated.
Yeah, very nice. I find it very interesting with the term advocacy because a lot of people see their lawyers as their advocate, and a lot of lawyers only go in so far in terms of negotiating with a sales representative in terms of any commercial property space. There's only so much a lawyer can do and only so much time a lawyer will provide to you. We try and do our best to put our clients in the best position, and that is part of our tagline in terms of providing peace of mind before signing on the dotted line. But in terms of those who are unfamiliar with buyer's agents, just quickly, what is a buyer's agent? What role do you perform, and what clients do you typically see? Because I know each of you working in different spaces have that different client onboarding journey and a different client experience. I'll go the other way this time, and I'll start off with you, Vicki.
So in commercial property, unlike residential, you really don't have a lot of data out there when it comes to how to value a commercial property, or whether the one that you're looking at as a business owner or organisation is the best proposition in the market for you. So really the value that we bring to the table is to be able to explore all the opportunities for clients, and where we work with business owners and organisations, we allow them to simply focus on their business and their organisation whilst we do the heavy lifting of discovering what is the right proposition for what they need. Having a business background, having a property background as a buyer's advocate or as an advocate in general, we come to the table with understanding what a business needs, short-term, medium-term, long-term, and how that particular property is going to serve them both in business and as an asset for wealth as well.
Very
So
nice.
I think it's a very interesting proposition in the commercial space to be able to do that for businesses.
Yeah, I think after COVID, the commercial space got a massive hit and negative news in terms of the value proposition, but now it's making a strong comeback. And I think people are realising if they're using their SMSFs as a vehicle for investment and making it work for them, it's making a strong return, but also in the warehouse and storage space because you can pass on that land tax obligation, which is a massive saving with the new government rules that came in Victoria.
That's right. And you're looking at it from an investor point of view. And so the market cycle right now is very interesting because where it took a hit for some, particularly those that have had commercial property for a very long time and it's a vacant possession that now they need to wear that land tax. They can't pass it on because it's vacant. Now's a great opportunity for those that are looking at buying vacant possession because they're business owners and organisations because you can really negotiate good rates.
Yeah, and not just that, for those that don't know, there is a stamp duty saving in the regional commercial industrial
There is
space.
indeed.
In regional areas, you get a 50% stamp duty. Not just is there a new commercial, industrial and property tax regime, so CRPT for short, where they're trying to abolish stamp duty and introduce a new tax for commercial property. A lot of people don't know you get a 50% stamp duty saving on settlement. And it's funny, sometimes I'll talk to commercial investors, I'll be like, I better tell my conveyancer this. And it's like, well, this is why you come to a solicitor because we know this information off the bat and not every conveyancer know this stuff. Rob, I'll turn to you now in terms of, buyer's agency. What is it and what's your client?
Yeah, it's interesting. We try and to help clients sort of understand what we do. We sort of differentiate ourselves from the traditional buyer's agent model because we have a different model. I guess I usually use the analogy we're like a mortgage broker but for property. So a mortgage broker doesn't charge the client a fee; they get paid by the financial institution that they introduce the business to. We're similar in the property space, so we don't charge our clients a fee for our time. We get paid by the vendor, but we work on behalf of the client. So our focus is on residential property, new and off the plan, and our core target audience is investors. So we really take the time to understand what is that's driving their investment decision and what's their motivation. So do they have a short-term tax issue that they're trying to manage? Are they looking to build long-term capital growth, which most people are? Are they looking for sort of short-term passive income? Are they looking to invest through a self-managed super fund? So we take the time with the client to really understand what their objectives are up front, and then we will go and do the research on their behalf. So we take advantage of a lot of independent data, best practice data in the industry. So all of our recommendations are data-backed. We present the option or options that we think are best placed for the client, and the client always has the decision as to whether they want to move forward or not. Once they want to move forward, we facilitate the purchase for them. And because we're often selling off the plan property, there's a relationship there that goes beyond just the initial settlement.
Yep.
We obviously work with clients to give them updates on their construction progress, final inspections, and then once the property has actually been completed, we'll stay in touch with them and talk to them every 6 to 12 months just to review how that investment's going.
And Lisa, yourself?
For me, it's all about the customer. So, you're talking about the real estate agents, etc. They're all about the vendor or the seller. So for us, it's all about the buyer. So making sure that they've got a voice, they know and understand the terminology, and that's one of the hard things that kind of happens. So the difference is that, you can go in, you talk the talk because you've got to have a real estate license. And then that just means you can understand what's going on and understand those different things with it. One of the things that I make sure of is going through is understanding what the person's goals are. And then finding out how to get to that kind of goal. So if they're looking at a full property portfolio, it might not be the first property that you're looking at. It's more could be the second.
Yeah.
But if you buy the wrong property for that first one, then it might kill the second one off.
Yeah.
So it's making sure that you buy the right property first, and then we can piggy bank off that to get the second one.
Yeah.
So it's also finding the right areas. So it's a lot of investigation, a lot of data. So looking at that data-driven, like Rob was saying, a lot of data information.
Yeah.
One of the things that we do that's sometimes different from other ones is that we'll go into the actual areas, and it's Australia-wide. So I'll actually put myself, if it's Queensland or New South Wales, put myself in that area to get to know that area properly as well. and to get to know the agents, because obviously we're looking at area or wanting to know properties before they come on the market.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's looking at those pre-market, because I wouldn't say off-market all the time, because, they send them out to still 100 buyers agents, etc.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I wouldn't say that they're fully off-market just for some people.
Yeah.
But that's what a buyer's agent can get is, that listing beforehand. And if you're knowing what those properties are and how they're already there, it's having access to that to be able to know, is this property going to suit my client and how do we go through there?
Yeah.
It's the due diligence. So making sure straight away, okay, fire, flood, heritage, etc., has that all met that criteria? It's making sure that they don't buy that dud going through. So it's not just about a nice colour, etc. It's about a good investment going through.
Yeah.
It's hand-holding them the whole way. But one of the big things that I like to do is the education as well. So I've had clients who have came for 1 or 2 properties, and then I let them go if they want to, so that they can actually then continue on with their property portfolio and still actually touch base with them. I mean, everyone thinks that they can do property and residential especially. It's one of the hard areas because everyone goes, I can look on realestate.com, I can do that. But it's if they make a mistake, sometimes it will put them out for 10 years.
Yeah.
So one of the things if you get a buyer's agent is making sure you don't make those mistakes early on, because you could be 5-10 years down the track before you can jump into that next property.
Yeah, of course. I think it's an important point you make, because ultimately people have to remember that the sales rep agent is acting on behalf of the vendor. So even though they may seem like your buddy, they're trying to paint a perfect picture for you to sell that property for their vendor. Ultimately, their interest from a realist perspective is for themselves, because they're making a commission on the sale. They want to turn over that deal. So a lot of sales reps in the industry can be quite transactional in nature, because they want to get that over the line for their client. I think what people don't realise, what buyers agents, advocates do is act on behalf of their client and their customer, and they do that by leveraging those negotiation tactics and making those savings. An example for us would be where we get a building report and there's several, not minor, or what we can say in the industry, latent defects or in the profession, and I'll get clients come to me and say, what can we do? And, the general conditions and special conditions say, well, you can do very little. It's really at the vendor's discretion whether they're willing to repair or whether they're willing to discount on the purchase price. Now, as a solicitor, that's what I mean. We can only go so far. But when I know I have someone like you, Vol, I see your work all the time, we're always getting discounts or adjustments at settlement on repairs and rectifications. That vendor doesn't want us to lose a sale. There is a commonality between a vendor and a purchaser and a contract in that both really want to come together and get a deal done. So I see a lot of buyers, agents and advocates getting that negotiation piece over the line to get a reduction in the purchase price. Normally when you're talking conveyancer or lawyer and lawyer, that price reduction doesn't always come, because we're just coming back to our vendors and saying, well, you don't have to agree to anything. You don't have to agree to any sort of price reduction. So I think the value add is in that negotiation behind the scenes that clients don't really see. And, we see the war stories, the duds that they purchase per se. And we always hear post-settlement stuff. There was pest damage that wasn't picked up. And it's like, well, if you had a buyer's agent, then that's something that you would have picked up in the first hand. So just to go on from that, in terms of, some of the client stories or examples you've had, I've got so many war stories where we've seen settlements go wrong afterwards, and clients have had to flip properties less than a year afterwards, and they've made a loss on their initial investment. And they're literally just divesting what their overheads are because of what the market's doing, or they've just bought in that wrong area. They haven't looked at the sums, because you're right, people like to DIY it. We see that with wills all the time, and where it goes wrong, the lawyers are making money. What are your client experiences or journeys throughout that you've had, not only success, because everyone loves posting their successes, or where you've seen them take it on themselves and seen some failures?
So
jump in.
Yeah. I mean, there's so many in commercial property. I think probably one of the big things with commercial property particularly, so we're buyers advocates and we're tenant advocates as well. We're also vendor advocates in commercial property. But focusing on tenant advocacy, what we see far too often is, regardless of how small or large society is, you'll find that in a lot of instances, tenants simply aren't getting their contract reviewed. They're kind of taking it on themselves to read through what they believe is the terms of and conditions and negotiating a little bit from there, but they're simply not getting it reviewed by a proper property lawyer. And so that's one of the biggest mistakes, because what ends up, and I've seen it happen far too many times, is when it comes to them exiting for whatever reason, then there's the make good clause.
Yeah.
They get themselves into a lot of trouble.
I've seen that happen
and that's
before.
costly.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that comes up a lot. And again, in commercial property, you don't know what you don't know. And I think that's the whole benefit of having the advisory team around you. And more important, I would say, in commercial property, it's also important in resi, but more so in commercial property, because you do need the commercial property lawyer that knows how to read a commercial property
That's right.
contract.
Yeah.
You do need your lender who is well versed on commercial property products relating to your situation, rather than a residential mortgage broker.
Yeah, that's right.
You do need a buyer's advocate that is focused on commercial property relative to what you're looking for, rather than an advocate. All of those things are really important, because there are a lot of tricky stories out there, and I can riff off so many, but I also want to give the platform to others. But
Yeah, no, I've seen them myself. Like, recently I've been speaking to tenants, and a lot of them just think they can just look at it themselves, look at the terms, the rent, the CPI increases, and then go, yep, no worries.
Yeah.
But then, like you said, what you don't know, you don't know. If you come to a commercial property lawyer or a buyer's agent, you know that you can get a fit-out contribution period if it's an initial lease. You know you can get a rent-free holiday for 3 to 6 months on a vacant tenancy.
that's right.
So, there are negotiation leverages that you can pull on by having those
Yeah.
professionals around you. So I'll turn to you, Rob. What do you see normally that you can leverage on with clients?
Well, it's interesting. It's funny, investment should be all about the numbers, but we see and we know that 95% of investors make decisions based on emotion. So, I've personally worked with clients where, I've presented two options to them, and one's in an area that, let's just say the demographic is probably people with are less privileged, and then another property in an area that's in an area that's thought of fairly highly, and even though the stronger numbers might actually be associated with the one that's in the we'll call it the lower socio-demographic area, the client often is guided by their perceptions of an area, even though the numbers don't necessarily stack up as highly. So I think one of the things that, it's not a challenge, but at the end of the day, it's the client's decision. But you try and compare apples and apples and just sort of look at the fundamentals. Okay,
Yeah.
what's the investment cost? What's the return on the investment that you're likely to get? What's your rental income likely to be? What's the supply and demand in the area? So that's one thing. I think the other thing is, particularly when we're dealing with off the plan, which is what we predominantly do, if it's a house and land package, I always try and steer a client in the direction of a block of land that's titled or close to title, because we've seen so many times how land titles can just blow out. And, when a client, they might know what their financial situation is in today, but, if that land blows out for a long period of time, that can often put people in difficulty, and they have trouble settling. So, and the other great thing, of course, is that we always try and protect a buyer by making sure that there's a subject to finance clause, and you can do that on a title block of land, but you can't do that on an off the plan. A block that's not off the plan. Sorry, that a block
off the plan.
that is off the plan. So we try and protect the client's interest and make sure that they've always got an exit strategy if required.
Yeah. It's interesting you say that emotional decision that comes down to, and a lot of it is financial, but a lot of it is personal pressure that comes about with buying in either an affluent suburb or a lower socioeconomic. It's funny, I've seen a lot of, since the new introduction of taxes into Victoria, a lot of clients and investors push out to Colac, Ballarat and the surrounding suburbs in Ballarat because of that lower price point, lower socioeconomic but higher capital growth. And then eventually those suburbs push up. I mean, I saw that happen with Clifton Springs and St Leonards when Kaluas was developing. And that's where, like you said, you got those longer term settlements, but then I think it's a benefit to clients sometimes because you've got an 18-month settlement period where you've got that equity growth over 18 months. So you don't necessarily lose out on the value if you get that price point right. But then our favourite mechanism as property lawyers is a nomination, a sale of real estate nomination form. And then recently, in the last few years, the State Revenue Office changed the definition of land development, which meant that if there was land development between your contract date and the nomination date, they'll sting the original purchaser and the new purchaser for double stamp duty. I mean, we know it's in their name as State Revenue Office. They're only interested in collecting revenue on behalf of the government, and the government's in so much debt now. So we really have to be on point when we're advising clients about using the nomination mechanism. And even to that point, even though you've got a common law right to nominate on a contract, we're always talking about this, still right and or nominee, but we're also finding special conditions around charging clients around nominating, because then you have to do a little bit of extra administration work. Unfortunately, conveyancers are charging at such a low price point that they try and penalise the purchaser at every instance. So whenever I can for investors, I'm getting rid of those nomination clauses, because I know at any stage they may pivot and nominate in a corporate trustee. And I mean, you see that, Lisa, with your clients in terms of the journey that they create with accountants, professionals, financial advisors. How do you handle their emotive side of things when making decisions on investments?
I think, look, it's more making sure that they've got the right team around them, and that we actually all work together. So when I'm setting up that first original briefing with the client, etc., it's finding out who those people are on the team and touching base with them. The more we can find out about the client, their journey and what they've done beforehand, is we can find any of those sticking points, especially if they've bought in self-managed super fund, which obviously goes into a whole another dimension, which we need another whole kind of day on. But all of that stuff, it just helps, are they setting up in a trust, all that kind of thing. Where are they up to? So the more we can know about it, the more we can help them through that journey. Rigging up the broker, and first of all, can we go for unconditional on finance, or do we need 7 days or 14? For me to then be able to negotiate, I can negotiate a lower price to be able to go unconditional on finance. So it's knowing not only the price point, what their conditions are, etc., but the emotions that the client gets into. Sometimes I can get around that by knowing more about the client and where they're sitting, so that I help them out and before I even have to talk to them about it.
Yeah.
So I can give them their options. We can do this or this.
Yeah.
So when I go to them, they're going, oh, but what about my broker? I've already spoken to them. This is where they're at. Are you comfortable now with this as well? So it's more being on the front foot with them and knowing what the questions they're going to ask. And the more you've done it, the more you know what those are.
Yeah. So in terms of that, I mean, I guess that's also part of your holistic due diligence process, not just dealing with the emotions of the client, but in terms of dealing with the broker, the property lawyer, the conveyancer, so the agent, so to speak. How long do you find that end-to-end process takes? Is it an initial consult and then essentially you say to the client, I'll come back to you with my briefing? Or is it pretty much every step of the way you're reporting back to them after you're dealing with those professionals?
It depends on the kind of client they are. Some, if they're time poor and they just want it, then it's a really standoff kind of one. If they're a younger one and they want that education and knowledge, then it's very much a hand step by step and they'll want to contact you all the time. So it depends on the kind of client I'm working on and what they want. So I'll actually change the way I deal with them depending on how much knowledge they want and education they want along the way, or if they just want the property.
Yeah, I'm always trying to educate my clients by showing our work, because everything's online these days, and a lot of people see the paperwork that lawyers will do. Like there's an FRCGW clearance certificate, which is foreign residence capital gains tax withholding. There's an ATO GST withholding certificate. So I feel like, conveyancers always say we're the new tax collectors. Yeah. But do you guys like to show your work in terms of the negotiation tactics that you're using behind the scenes with clients? Because I'll always try and include them to show them that, this is where I'm leveraging my skills and my knowledge on your behalf.
Yeah, I think similar to what Lisa said, it's based on their appetite for knowledge, whether they have the bandwidth and time to be able to absorb all the information. And I think that, so you've got to read the situation. I always say that the field of work that I'm in is the end product is property. It's actually all about psychology all the way through.
And counselling sometimes.
And counselling, exactly. And a bit of business advisory. And then the end product is hopefully property. But it just depends on what the client's appetite is for knowledge and how much exposure they want. They've also got a business to run, an organisation to run, a board to report to. So you want to be able to read the situation. From our point of view, we have a really streamlined, we're still building out the infrastructure, but a really streamlined way of reporting, and that's both from a due diligence perspective and a good business practice perspective, but it's also good for us to have that kind of reporting all set in the
Yeah.
back end. So we provide that, but the level of guidance that we offer through that is very much led by the client.
Yeah.
So it's really case by case scenario, and some briefs are easier to meet than other briefs, but and there's a complexity. So if you're reporting to a board, as an example, which we often do when we're working with our nonprofits and organisations, it's a lot more reporting involved.
Yeah.
When you're dealing with the plumber who simply wants a warehouse, well, sometimes they want to get involved as well. So client led.
So how do you stay objective? When you're dealing with clients who are making an emotional decision, how do you pull them back a little? Like, what are the little tricks of the trade that you, in terms of looking at the numbers game?
Well, for us, I wouldn't say it's a trick. We try and be as transparent as possible. So if the client has an aptitude or an interest in the numbers, then we're very we will show them some forecasts of what we think the property is going to look like and how it's going to perform. So we've got a pretty stock standard cash flow forecast sheet that we will show the client, and we're very happy to send that to their accountant and to their financial advisor because, as Lisa said, most investors that have been doing it for a while have got a team around them, and that's fantastic. We encourage them to utilise that team's expertise. So for us, it's really about here are the options. We can put forward our opinion, but at the end of the day, it's the client's decision at the end of the day. So we put the numbers in front of them. We back it up with the data that we've utilised to come to that recommendation, and it's up to the client from there.
Yeah. Where do you guys see clients get emotionally attached to decisions in property investment, or is it simply just, okay, this is the highest profit I can make over the long term, we're going all in?
I think it's definitely the numbers, but probably location-wise a little bit. I definitely talk to them about diversity. So, depending on where they live, if they've got a property at a certain location or a certain state, try and making sure that it is diverse, depending on what number property and different things like that as well.
Yeah, nice. And yourself, where have you seen it gone wrong possibly by making a less subjective decision?
I think the complexity with commercial property is less about emotions getting involved, where emotions are involved. It's a business generally that they're operating, is when you're dealing with multiple parties in the decision making. And I think that as the case would be, I imagine, in residential, the bulk of the work really is in that front end and making sure that your clients are aligned in what the end result needs to be.
Yeah.
Because if you don't calibrate that in a particular way, then you just, that's going to really falter all the way through. So, I think that you get to the crunchy end of making a property decision, and if they're not aligned, and I'm dealing with a couple of those now where they were, but one's personal situation has changed, that can really throw things off at the pointy end.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
I've seen that happen before.
Yeah.
And everyone's asking us, how do I get out of this contract? And unfortunately, we have to give them the advice that it's ironclad and they're going to lose their deposit. Fortunately for them, when you breach a contract like that, no one's got enough money to go to court. When vendors are seeking specific performance of a contract, they basically just cash in on the deposit and then move on and sell again. But there is always that, when lawyers are dealing with worst case scenarios, always given that worst case risk that you could be pulled in front of a judge and asked to actually buy that, forced to buy that property by way of a court order. What trend, broadly based, everyone loves this question. What trends are we seeing currently right now in each respective industries in terms of buyers? What are their movements? Are they essentially stacking assets? The current war in Iran isn't helping anything. I saw petrol in Queensland recently was over $2.20 and now it's just jumped up here. Not a lot of people are going to have spare cash to buy. What's your advice, or, not bespoke advice, of course, because you can't rely on this for financial or legal advice, but what are your practical tips or considerations that you give to clients now in the current market?
Well, if you're happy for me to jump in, I would say that this current market cycle is favouring business owners buying and organisations buying vacant possession commercial property, because rather than a trend, what's happening in the market cycle off the back of land tax and a very tricky economic few years that we've had, a lot of these old school property owners that have had commercial property for a long time and possibly now they're vacant and now having to pay the land tax, and the land tax increased a year and a half ago, almost 2 years ago now. And they're also facing situations where potentially they don't want to pass down assets to family members because that causes disputes. It's not a clean cut for them. They want to sell them off. So many factors right now has led to the fact that it is a very good time to be buying vacant possession commercial property, and providing you know how to price it well, you can negotiate well. And so we're finding right now that there are a lot of business owners that are doing really well, and they're buying vacant possession commercial property, and they're buying it in their SMSF because that makes a lot of sense. Particularly, you have the one entity in the SMSF that buys the property and leases it out to your business. Like, it's almost a no-brainer to be able to do that.
It's something I'm toying with the idea with right now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's chat.
Definitely. Oh, definitely. Rob, what are you saying currently?
Look, there's always uncertainty, isn't there? And interest rates will drop and they'll rise again. It's a cycle. Who knows what's going to happen with the latest conflict in the world? But I think if you're an investor, oftentimes of uncertainty like this can actually expose some excellent opportunities if you've got a clear strategy and you focus on you know exactly kind of with the assistance of someone like ourselves, you narrow down what the right type of property is, and that actually can present some really good opportunities for people, and also some excellent opportunities to negotiate, because vendors at the end of the day need to sell their stock. So if they've got less demand, then they're more likely to be willing to negotiate. So it's not all necessarily doom and gloom for investors.
Yeah. And Lisa, what are you saying?
No, I totally agree. Like, when people are going, oh, it's doom and gloom and, this and that, that's always when there's an opportunity.
Yeah.
I always think that, when people are saying that there's issues happening or whatever, the same thing like with the land tax they're saying in Victoria and that, like, you look at insurances and you look at the rates up in North Queensland, it actually matches more what our land tax is in Victoria. So if you actually match them together, they kind of wipe each other out. So you do things like that and you go, okay, well, what's the difference? Everyone's buying, or were in a year and a half ago, buying up in North Queensland. That was a hot place. But now everyone's going, oh, we can't buy in Victoria because of the land tax. Well, hang on a sec. You just didn't worry about rates or insurances. Yeah, you're worried about Victoria land tax. So you've got to think about what's what, and yes, it's apple and oranges, but when you do your FISOs out and your numbers, you look at the numbers.
You look at it from a holistic perspective. You look at the whole picture.
So if you actually do your numbers out and you know what your numbers are and where you can buy, there's some opportunities that are going to come about.
It's funny because people always know the mass media will give you the danger news to sell headlines and clickbait. So I'll always look at, like, you see an interest rate meeting, the State Revenue Office, the Commissioner for the State Revenue Office has never had so much news items about their meetings. And it's the hottest topic. But when mass media is harping on about danger, it normally means you do the opposite, because there's literally fear-mongering a whole section and majority of your population into not moving and essentially handcuffing them to financial decisions that they shouldn't be making. They should be moving and investing. I mean, I remember when the global financial crisis hit years and years ago, people like Robert Kiyosaki, who else was it? Anthony Robbins was saying, now's the time to get into the market because everything's priced out. Whereas, everyone was saying, no, you got to hold on to your cash because the subprime market's lost out. So I think if you're listening to mass media, you're clearly not speaking to professionals about, the person who says, oh yeah, mum and dad said, or my uncle said, they're the war stories. You go speak to the right professionals. Just to finish on one thing, in terms of if you had to have a chat, speak to a first-time buyer or investor, someone who is looking at dipping their toe in or they're sitting on the fence, what would you say to them about work, in terms of what value add can you provide to them? Just give us some little gem of knowledge that you think you'd be able to give to a client, consumer who's looking at using a buyer's advocate to assist in their investment journey.
I'll have a crack at that one first. So I guess one of the value adds that we provide is we do the due diligence on the builder or the developer. And for a lot of people, they don't know necessarily what a builder's reputation is or what the developer's reputation is. So we take that into account when we do our analysis, and we will only put forward a recommendation where we feel comfortable that developer or that builder is going to be able to deliver what they say they will. So I think that's particularly important for people who are first-time investors, and it's just as important for first-home buyers as well. You want to make sure that they're getting good advice, and it's really important that they do get good advice. Because at the end of the day, our client base is based on referral business. So if you take care of the client, then the rest kind of takes care of itself.
Very nice. Lisa?
Yeah, I agree as well. I think one of the main things is that it's, I'm just trying to figure out the whole thing then, is really about that education and getting the right information, etc. If a new person came to me, it's, you're looking at it. We've got 25 years experience in the industry of buying investment and buying property. If you're a brand new one, you're not going to know what you don't know. So it's a matter of, we've made mistakes ourselves with buying property. We've learned through that. We've learned, we've paid over 100, 200K of education ourselves. You can't get that within 1 or 2 years or looking through the internet or listening to podcasts. So why not use somebody who has been there, done that, made mistakes so that you don't make those same mistakes on the way through?
Yeah.
It's also important that if you're going to look at a buyer's agent is to make sure that you find someone who has that background though as well, because there are a lot of buyer's agents out there now who don't have the experience or don't have that kind of knowledge, and there's more and more coming on. So it's really important to make sure that if people are going to do a buyer's agent, they don't go every buyer's agent is the same, because the industry isn't governed at the moment either. So it is also making sure that they do find the right one, the same as what you would do for the right tutor or whatever it is as well.
Yeah.
So that would be my main advice, is to find the right person who fits with you to help you along that journey, because it's such an important journey. You're spending a lot of money. It's one of your biggest purchases that you're going to make. So make it right.
I always say that when people ask me about my conveyancing fees.
So I think so important with commercial property is that when they approach us, we want to make sure that they're at the right part in the equation to be able to make the move into commercial property. And what I mean by that is more often than not, they're simply not at the right point in their journey. So we will send them back a couple of steps and say, make sure that you have spoken with your accountant and you have set up the right structure to purchase in. That's key. And then make sure that you have spoken with an appropriate lender who is well-versed in commercial products, rather than the mortgage broker that helped you with your home loan. And I'm sure there are many good ones out there that have cross-discipline in their mortgage broking services, but commercial property lender, structure to purchase is all set up. And if you've got your house in order from that perspective, now you're ready to talk about property. And so when they do come to us, we like to front end a lot of complimentary sessions. And I say that we know how to put boundaries in place, but we do want to front end as many complimentary sessions, because we want to make sure that when they do engage us to be their buyer's agent, or when they are ready to purchase a property, they're really ready and they've got all the information that they need in order. So we give them some homework. Like we send them to Real Commercial, or commercial real estate, let's say, but Real Commercial. We send them to the sold tab. We tell them to populate it with their criteria based on what they're looking for. You come up with a few scenarios and tell me what you're looking for, and then let's workshop that. I really like to be able to challenge assumptions. I like my assumptions to be challenged as well, but when we're workshopping it together with their advisory team as well, I know that we get a really good end result. So the value that we want to be able to add is make sure that they're very well prepared before they even start the process of buying.
I think one of the common themes that have come through this podcast is extremely important, is having that team of advisors, no matter what journey you're on. And part of that as a solicitor is giving that obligation-free consult, is to make sure that when we're at that end stage, right before they're signing the contract, they know that they're definitely 100% all in no matter what decision they're making. But it is extremely important that you have the right financial advice from a professional, whether it be a planner or an accountant. You have the right advice around your borrowing capacity and what your cost of spending is, because all you need is a 25-point basis interest rate increase and you find yourself in trouble, especially with petrol prices the way they are these days. I'm not going for any long-haul journeys soon, right? But also the buyer's advocate is a key piece which has come on board recently in Australia. That's hugely popularised in Victoria. I mean, in interstate in America. But interestingly enough, when I was working for the Law Institute, we intentionally drafted in the purchaser's agent details in there for the role of the buyer's advocate with that foresight, knowing that they play an important role on behalf of clients. That details aren't yet being filled in contracts yet, but I'm sure they will be in the near future, because they do play that crucial piece on behalf of the buyer. Because ultimately, if no one's going to go into bat for you, it's going to be that buyer's advocate. And I've seen the results that each of you have all provided for your clients. You do have that cost saving no matter what, fee you impose on them. But essentially you can do the role that sometimes solicitors that are limited in capacity can provide, and some aren't willing to provide at all. So each of you, thank you for coming, for discussing what you guys each do and providing value to each of your client base.
Can I please add one final bit,
Sure.
especially with your level of service, particularly with commercial property? Many people make the mistake of simply going to a residential conveyancer and someone that focuses on resi conveyancing. It's really important to get an expert who knows how to read a commercial property contract.
Oh, thank you.
Because, it's important, because I've seen what happens when you don't
It goes
do that.
wrong, yeah.
It can go very, very wrong. Or you are at that crux point of either it being a seamless transaction or it going sideways. So
All right. Well, and to finish on, just each of you just quickly give yourselves your contact details, where people can find you. Give a plug for anyone who's listening. Facebook, Instagram.
Facebook, www.personalisedpropertyprofessionals.com.
Beautiful.
And phone number 0411 341 324.
Beautiful. Rob?
Well, you can find me on LinkedIn, or you can contact me. I don't mind people contacting me on my mobile, 0403 016 844.
And Vicki?
I was True North Buyers Advocate, so we are now Impactor Commercial Advocates, and if you Google either one of those, there's heaps of contact details, I think. Vicki Lakudis on LinkedIn.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Thank you all.
Thank you, Paul.
Thanks, Paul.
Thanks, guys.